put them in the Q&A. You can put them in the Q&A, and we will look at those questions, compile them at the end, and answer them. So there is the Q&A feature at the top of your screen, hopefully. And with that, I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves. I will give it to Nicole first.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Good evening and welcome, everyone. I'm Nicole Banks. I serve as one of the Associate Deans of Students and work very closely with a number of programs from our area, but most specifically the Parent and Family Engagement Program. So this set of work that Rachel is leading and our campus climate support work. So happy to be here tonight. Laura?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Blake Jones, and as has been said already, I serve as the Associate Vice President and Dean of Students. Rachel, do you just want me to segue into my more general introduction now? Okay. I have been in this role at the University of Michigan for 15 years, and I have been a professional in higher education for actually going on 40 years, postmasters. So I've worked at a number of institutions prior to the University of Michigan. And I'm really excited to be here with you tonight. The work with the parents and families of our students is something that I truly enjoy. I was so excited when the portfolio of working with parent and family engagement was added to my portfolio. Because when I had been at another university, I'd had that in my portfolio before. And so literally helping you and coaching and guiding you through your students' experience is something that everyone on this call is truly committed to. I too have something in common with all of you in that I am a parent. And my youngest, I have 3 sons. The youngest is a junior in college. So I'm a couple of years ahead of those of you whose oldest or youngest sons or daughters are in their first year in college. But my older 2 are through college. My oldest son is married, and I'm going to be a grandparent in July. I haven't done that before. But yes, the staff know that I'm very excited about that. And so I've had my own experience with 3 of my biological children going through college, and I know firsthand what the questions are, the things that are on your mind, the things you might worry about, and that when your student struggles, that you struggle too. And some of the most difficult challenges as our children get older is helping them navigate through things. And so I'm happy that all of us can be here to support you in that. So we do have some information I'm going to cover in general, and I've tried in as many places as I can to incorporate questions that we received from some of you in advance in the initial remarks that I'll give. And then, as Rachel had indicated, questions that you're subsequently just right now thinking about and putting into the chat, Nicole will compile and we will spend time answering at the end. So you can go to the next slide, Rachel. So this conversation is, as indicated on this slide, multifaceted in terms of the things we're going to try to do. We definitely will acknowledge the importance of student engagement and give you a snapshot of the support that's available generally at U of M, but really in this session tonight, specifically on the support that's available to help your student get engaged if that has been something that they've found to be challenging or might still be struggling with. We're also going to provide an overview of just in general the support services that are available at the university, and then allow you to ask questions and share your thoughts. You can go to the next slide, Rachel. So as we think about engagement, we talk with our students about their Michigan experience. And in student life, the division that we are all a part of, we take great pride in the fact that our students' Michigan's experience outside the classroom, as we work with our students, our student leaders, our alumni that come back, we hear over and over again how important not just the academic experience is for students, but all of the other things surrounding that, and helping students connect to the breadth and depth of all of what there is at Michigan and the ways to be involved and engaged is something that we have a lot lot of pathways and opportunities and ways to describe and assist. But we also recognize that in a place as big as Michigan, it also can be just navigating the girth of opportunities that are out there can be overwhelming for some. And so it can take a little while for students to get their sea legs and get comfortable. And some students gravitate almost immediately to being involved in similar ways that they might have been involved in similar types of activities or interest areas than they had in high school. Other students really want to forge a new path and go off in a new direction and explore and do something different. So regardless of which direction your student might be heading in, we know that the benefits listed on this slide in terms of their fine-tuning and continuing to cultivate and sharpen their leadership skills that they will use as they move forward in their future careers, in their internships, and in the opportunities that they're engaging in at Michigan is a big part of engagement or benefit of engagement. The friendships that are developed, the lifelong skills that they're gleaning. There's a lot of research in higher education on the impact of engagement. And we know that with engagement and moderate engagement, not overdoing a student's engagement, it leads to higher grade point averages, increases in retention and graduation rates, and really ensuring that a student is having a well-rounded experience in terms of, in a community as diverse as ours, learning inclusive practices, practicing interpersonal skills, enhancing their experience overall, and having fun. Because while we are very serious about academics and engagement and co-curricular engagement at Michigan, we also know that this is a time in your student's life when they want to have friends, they want to have an active social life and engagements, and they really want to enjoy their experience. You can go to the next slide, Rachel. So I know from looking at a couple of the questions that came in advance, and I also subscribed to the portal and read the articles that many of you probably read in your feed around the challenges at the end of a first semester. Again, if you are all the parents or family members of first-year students, that some students may still be trying to find and connect with the right form of engagement for them. Others might have taken on too much, and now they're trying to refine and ask themselves, what's more reasonable with now that they understand and fully have experienced the academic rigors of college. And others could still be really struggling to find a way to connect. So I'm trying to tonight talk about that wide range of experiences your students could be having. And if you've attended any of the prior virtual conversation series sessions that we've had, I don't want to be repetitive, but I'm going to touch on a couple of key things. And if you didn't attend those sessions and things that I say tonight spark your interest, I know that the previous sessions are all available from the website and have been recorded. But our Center for Campus Involvement is on some other college campuses, you might hear that referred to as a student activities office. But our Center for Campus Involvement has responsibility for supporting our students' organizations, helping students find and connect to student organizations. And we do at Michigan have over 1,700 student organizations. And so when I talked a minute ago about the sheer magnitude of what's available can be overwhelming for students, we recognize that. And a couple of years ago, actually during COVID, we piloted a program called a Resource Navigator program. And the Resource Navigators were initially a group of staff who were willing to work with students and help and connect them during a time of COVID and of great disconnect. And we found such benefits to the program that we decided to continue it and use peers, so other students, helping students be able to connect and find engagement opportunities. And there's various pathways and ways that your student, if they reach out to a resource navigator, the key areas of engagement that they do have and the ability to connect students. The first bucket is students who might be looking for research opportunities, internships, networking or volunteering opportunities. That's a bucket of connections that resource navigators will talk with your student about and very directly connect them to the opportunity or the volunteer or the research or internship opportunity that they're most interested in. A second pathway of their work is connecting students to those 1,700 organizations I told you about. And in the fall, and then just again last week, there is a program at the beginning of every semester. And in the winter, we call it Winterfest, where those clubs and organizations are there and available for students to walk literally table to table and find out information, talk to somebody who's part of that organization, form a connection, ask a question about the time commitment. And so again, the resource navigators can help with that. And if your student missed Winterfest and or they missed Festifall in the fall, resource navigators can still connect them in a very similar sort of manner. Resource navigators also provide information to students about any common question about resources on campus, from financial aid to employment to health and well-being resources, and will then again do a warm handoff and a direct connection to those resources, and not just say, oh, you can go to that building and find this resource. They will try to help your student, assist them to whatever level of support they need in getting there. And then finally, there's a pathway of resource navigation into academics, advising resources and other academic related concerns that students may have, the ability to connect them directly with a peer advisor inside a school or college, for example. So that, I know the Resource Navigator program is just one bullet point on this slide, but it is a really primary way for those of you that sent questions in about your students still maybe needing some support and being able to connect. That is the number one place I would encourage a student to go. Again, I'm assuming also that many of you on this call would have had your student is, if they are a first year student, they are likely living in a residence hall. And I know that the beginning of the year and as you were moving in, they were meeting their hall staff. You probably met the RA as you helped your student move in. But we can forget that the RA is a constant present, not just as you're moving in. And so a student who is struggling, maybe having difficulty making friends and finding connections. I know for someone who's introverted and struggling with that, it might be hard for them to disclose that to an RA. And there are occasions where we have a parent reach out and let us know that their student is struggling and that they would love to have the RA or the hall director or even someone from the Dean of Students office reach directly out to the student. And we would not necessarily have to say your parent asked us to do this, but we would just reach out to check in with them, connect with them. The most natural person to do that, of course, is their RA on their floor. And maybe that would open up the conversation for someone who's struggling to be able to acknowledge that and ask for help. I've already just mentioned our Dean of Students office. Rachel and Nicole are faces on this presentation with me, but we have staff in the Dean of Students office on call literally 24/7, 365 days of the year. Students can come to our office in person. They can just drop in. They don't have to have an appointment. They can choose to go online and make a virtual appointment and not have to go through the cold weather to get to the union to come in to see us. But again, any of the staff that are on call would be happy to sit with a student who just said, you know, I didn't get to go to Winterfest, or I did go to Winterfest. It was overwhelming. I haven't found a way to connect, but I'd look like some advice or some support in being able to make a connection and get involved in a meaningful way. Our office, our CAPS, which is our Counseling and Psychological Services Department, also is a place to definitely find general support. But for a student who's struggling and just wanting perhaps some help with anxiety that's getting in the way of connecting and making friends, I'm going to say a little more about CAPS in a minute because there was a specific question about face-to-face counselor appointments that I want to address. But CAPS is a tremendous resource for our students. Wolverine Wellness what I'm very proud and want to highlight there is in Wolverine Wellness, we have wellness coaches. And again, just by going to the website or dropping in their office in the University Health Service, a student can meet with a wellness coach. And oftentimes, the first thing we think about is academic support and going to an academic advisor. And sometimes that is exactly what a student needs if they're struggling with a course or they want a referral to an academic support resource. But a wellness coach will sit with your student and talk with them and kind of look at the totality of their life and how they're doing from 8 different dimensions of wellness and well-being, and be able to offer support and connections for the students to connect, whether that's, I'm physically not feeling as well, I need to get some more exercise, and I want to know about a group X class that I could join at the recreation facility, all the way to I'm really struggling financially and I need some support, or spiritually or emotionally. And so those wellness coaching appointments are, tremendous opportunities. We've been engaging and reaching out very directly through the common courses that most first year students have to take in terms of requirements. And through those courses, we're doing a well-being check-in survey. That's just a simple 4-question survey that the instructor does ahead of the first midterm exam. And it asks students some questions about how they're doing in the class and in general, and then connects them directly in the survey to how they can schedule an appointment with a wellness coach if that's something that they would be interested in doing. And certainly our Office of New Student Programs, which is the office you're familiar with as your student applied to Michigan and transitioned and came through orientation. Your student's school or college also has inside the school and college a tremendous number of school and college related clubs and organizations. And for some of our students, that's where they find their home. It's inside their academic school and college and the opportunities that are there. And then the last place where you can find support and get involved, though this is not an exhaustive list, but the last place on this slide is certainly our club sports program, which also, and I also want to reference our recreational sports programs are also often another place where students find connection and are able to interact and join an intramural team, make a new friend that way, and have that opportunity. One of the other questions that was posed related to engagement in advance was, what if your student is still in their learning in their residence hall, finding it difficult to make friends? And I said earlier that, the RA can be a resource there. But I also want to highlight and Rachel's going to put it in the chat in a few minutes, a link to a publication for first year students that our Counseling and Psychological Services Department has put together. It's called the First Year Guide. And that link will be in the chat. If you forget the link and want to think about it later and want to come to it, if you just go to the website for Counseling and Psychological Services, you can find it very easily on the front page of the website if you just scroll down. But it is a comprehensive guide on everything from what if I'm having a first conflict with my roommate, to if I'm feeling a level of anxiety or I'm shy, tips for being able to find connections and make friends. I can't do it justice without going into the document, but if your student is one of those students that is really struggling in that way, I would encourage you to refer them to that resource, or look at the resource yourself and be able to use it to give you some information that you can share with your student in whatever way you would normally offer that. And finally, I have often heard in the student leaders that I work with, one of the ways first year students have found a way to be connected is through our central student government. And they might not want to run to represent, to be in one of the seats on the assembly representing their school or college, or maybe they'll do that down the road. But specifically for first year students, CSG, the central student government, has a program where they take interns. So the student body president, the vice president, the program director and all of the various initiatives and uh, collaborations and programs that student government is putting on, they have student interns who walk alongside them. And again, based on interest, you might decide that you're going to be the student intern helping plan the self-love day for Valentine's Day, right? So that's a program I know that they have coming up next month. And so if student government has been something that your student did in the past, that might feel like a comfortable setting and a way to get involved. And there are always internships there that they're promoting. Our central student government sends out a monthly newsletter, and they promote the ways that students can connect to those internships. And the last thing I will say is that every Sunday night, your student gets an email about things that are going to be going on campus in the coming week. And we know that social media is much better for this generation of college students, and maybe not all of them are looking in their email. But if you have a student who's saying, there's really nothing going on, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I don't have much in the way of things to look forward to, you could ask them if they've gone into their UMich email and looked at that Sunday night email that comes out every week. Okay, I am going to pause here for a minute and look at the other questions that came in before we get to the new questions that you all may be sending in the chat right now. One of the questions that I saw was not so much about engagement, but it was a question about what if your student has conflicts with office hours, and they're having difficulty then, since they can't go to the office hour, connecting with their faculty member or their graduate student instructor. And so what I would share about that is your student could and should feel very comfortable reaching out via email to the faculty member to let them know that the set office hour that they have conflicts with other classes that they have or whatever else their conflict might be. And ask them if there's a different time that they could come in to meet with them or the GSI if it is a course that has a graduate student instructor. If they don't hear back from the faculty, which I don't think will happen because our faculty are usually very responsive, they also could reach out to the department office and ask about other ways to connect with the faculty member or the dean's office. So I wanted to address that. There was also another question about how could someone's student see a counselor face to face? And so I mentioned CAPS earlier, but I'm going to return to answer that question because CAPS is the location on campus where students can have both face-to-face and virtual appointments with our licensed therapists and clinicians that work in CAPS. And CAPS, it has many layers to the way they provide their service. And so the office for CAPS is on the 4th floor of the Michigan Union. So your student could call and schedule an appointment, go there in person. They could also call and schedule a virtual appointment. Additionally, all of the schools and colleges have embedded CAPS counselors. So counselors that are working in an office inside the individual schools and colleges. And again, not all first year students may realize that, but if that's more convenient to them, given their busy class schedule, than making their way to the union for an appointment at CAPS, it's still a CAPS counselor that they'd be meeting with, but in an embedded setting. They also have in CAPS peer counseling. And so if your student would be interested in scheduling and meeting with a peer in that setting, they can arrange that by calling CAPS or doing it through the website. And CAPS also offers groups. And so you have to register to join a CAPS group session, but they do also have groups. And I was looking at the groups that they're running for this winter that are open and advertised right now. There's a group on social anxiety. So if you have a student who's having a hard time making friends in a big place, joining that group would put them with other students who are probably similarly struggling with that. And maybe that's the place where they would find that new friendship. They've got a group going, working on using a video game format for teaching skill building. And so if your student is really into gaming, that might be a way through a group in CAPS that they could get connected. And then there's one-time 1-hour drop-in workshops that CAPS is offering on Fridays. The next one will be February 2nd, which is called the Anxiety Toolbox. And it's actually a session where they will help a student kind of work on social anxiety they might be experiencing and develop a plan for reaching out and forming connections. The specific question was about a face-to-face appointment. So that's why I've been talking about these face-to-face options first. Of course, when a student is in an imminent crisis situation, CAPS has a process that's called their counselor on duty, and a student can be seen immediately through COD. And then finally, we expanded last year, piloted the year before that, an online teletherapy, which is not face-to-face, unless you consider face-to-face on the video screen face-to-face. But that service is also available for students. And the ability to go in and prioritize the counselor that you would like to see, have a first appointment very, very quickly online, decide if you hit it off with that person, and if you don't, schedule a subsequent one with somebody else. That service, the students that I know are utilizing it are just raving about how effective it has been. So those are all the ways you could see a counselor face to face. And I think, Rachel, that covers all of the questions we had gotten early, unless I missed anything.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Laura. I am
No,
going to
that was a lot. I was talking fast, so I'm happy to slow down and back up in whatever way might be needed.
No problem. I am going to stop sharing just for a moment so that Nicole can compile any questions that we've received. I'm also going to place in the chat the link that Laura was talking about, Guide for First Year Students. I found that while I was screen sharing, I was unable to do that. So I'm going to place that in the chat for you. I also wanted to give you a reminder that, as Laura said, we do have all of our MFamily conversations from the fall recorded. And so we are able to send those out. If you have not been able to attend the other sessions and you want more information about what those looked like, I am happy to send that out to you. There will be some more slides that show you how to connect with us, and you can connect with me, and I'd be happy to share all of those with you. So I am placing that link in the chat.
Rachel, while you're
Yes.
doing that, I did just look back at my notes, and there was one other question that had been asked. I talked a lot about the large number of organizations we have, and there was a question that acknowledged that, but also asked how come some of them are so selective that students might want to join them, but then aren't able to. And so that is something that I do want to share, because that does happen across a number of our organizations. You know, we have incredible performance and theater arts groups and club sport teams that win national championships. But all of those types of organizations do require a student to audition, try out, you know, go and see if there's a space for them and the skills that they bring to that particular organization. We also have social fraternities and sororities. We also have pre-professional fraternities that are coeducational, but also can be very selective. So the pre-law fraternity or the pre-business fraternity. And students can get discouraged if they attempt to join one of those organizations and aren't successful the first time. And I wish I can't channel this as well as the student body president from a couple of years ago, who actually I was on a panel with him once, and a parent asked a question similar to this, and he shared that in his first year at Michigan, he experienced 17 rejections. I was horrified to hear that. So I asked him to say a little more about that. And I said, are you talking about you went through IFC recruitment and all 17 organizations, you know, you didn't get a bid? And he said, no, he actually had not tried to be in a fraternity. He wasn't interested in doing that. But he had been involved in a number of performance groups. He tried out, he got close, but wasn't selected. While when he told that story, and you knew he was sitting there as the president of the University of Michigan student government, you could see that he actually had found his path, right? But he said it was that caused him to then say, maybe I'll do an internship in student government, because student government was familiar to him. And that is where he found all of the social connections that he formed, and then became extremely involved there, so much so that he ran for and was elected, president of the student body. Not everybody's going to have that exact story, and I don't mean to, glamorize that. But at the same time, the message was keep trying. There is so much at Michigan. And, the club sport team that you tried out for might not need a left wing this year, but the following year they might need your skill set. So to not be daunted, to keep looking at groups, to look beyond your comfort zone and at the range of groups. And then the other thing is the fact that our Center for Campus Involvement prides itself on, if there is among our 1,700, if there's not the group that you want and you find what you need, you can also create your own group and we will help you do that. And so again, and we'll take more questions as the evening goes on. If there's more questions about the selectivity, and I thought at this time of year, there might even be questions about the recruitment process in fraternity and sorority life. Happy to answer those types of questions if that's relevant to the people we have on this call. I don't want to assume that it is. So Nicole, tell us what they're asking.
Well, we had one question that was submitted. You had mentioned the newsletter that comes out on Sunday nights, and people, one person wrote and asked, what is the subject line? So what I did is I actually found the sender, which is Student Life, University of Michigan, and the subject line, which I think you had mentioned in your comments, things to do, and there's a colon, and it references the week of. And so that was the question. Do you want to say more about the things to do newsletter? I can put the website link into chat so folks can see that there's an actual website that also has a lot of the info.
And I could say a little bit more about it. It is definitely a curated list. We have a website also that's called Happenings at Michigan. And Happenings at Michigan is an exhaustive list, but only as exhaustive as the school, college departments, units think to list things there. So there are some things that go on that, don't make it to Happenings or don't make it to the Sunday night email. But that curated list on Sunday night, really, it goes through the week and highlights 3 or 4 things a day. And I think they do a really good job of highlighting a really wide array of things that, the first thing on the list might not appeal to some students, but the second thing on the list, appeals to a different group of students. And so, providing the resources in that way, I think has been very, very helpful. And I get it every Sunday night because I'm on there as if I'm a student, because I was part of the test pilot group. And so I learned something every Sunday night about something going on that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. And so I think it's a great tool and a great resource.
Thank you. That was the only question so far. We still have some time if someone wants to type. Oh, looks like we just got one more question. So this one is saying the daughter is not making connections and now wants to transfer, so they're having a hard time. And so how do we help students who are facing that level of difficulty, that degree of difficulty, and maybe making a difficult decision about it? And then they also noted that many of the things that are offered may be or appear to be geared toward extroverts. And so do you have any thoughts about different approaches for introverts?
So I'll do both of those. And I don't know if it was the same person asking those 2 questions or not. So first, if a student, has completed a first semester here and is back now in the second semester and really thinks that they want to transfer, there's a couple of different approaches that come to mind for me. And so first and foremost is that's a big decision. And there's ways that they could think about sitting down with, and I talked about the counseling resources a minute ago, with a counselor in CAPS to really have an objective conversation and sort out the pros and cons of doing that. And sometimes I know from parenting my 3 children that somebody else that's not the parent being able to talk with them objectively about what they're thinking about can feel perhaps less pressured or more objective. And so I know that that's the type of thing that CAPS counselors would be very effective at helping a student think about and sort through. And in unpacking that, if really uh sometimes people come here and they learn that I thought I was going to want a really big college experience, but really after I've been here a while, I think my second choice option would have been to be at a smaller institution, and they might be making a very educated, well-informed, thoughtful decision to decide to transfer, and for good reason. And we don't, I mean, though we are very proud of our retention rates, we don't ever want to discourage a student from making a change if that's something that's really the right thing for them. But if what they're saying is Michigan or a place like Michigan would be the right place for me, I just can't navigate it well, or haven't been able to find a connection or to find support, before resorting to, changing the institution that you've decided you want to be at, I would encourage them to, if not a CAPS counselor, sit down with uh, someone I mentioned already, coming into the Dean of Students office, and our on-call staff will be able to help talk through that with them and help them unpack that. Or if the part of what is on their mind about this not working for them is anything academic related, their academic advisor could certainly, in an objective way, talk with them about that. I've done a number of those kind of meetings with students myself over the years, and sometimes it's that finding the connection. I have, walked a student down the hall to student government and connected them to an internship, and then had a success story at the end where they say, I did find my way and I made a connection, and now no way do I want to transfer. So and I'm not saying that's going to happen in every situation, but the resources that I've talked about, I don't want to repeat all of them to answer the question, but any of the things I talked about earlier are places where a student could go who's really, and if they want a name on the outset, I'm so disconnected right now, I'm really thinking about transferring, or if they don't want to name that, they just want to go in and ask for some support and help, whatever would feel best for your student. And Nicole, remind me now, the second half of that question was what?
The second half of it.
Introverts and extroverts.
Yeah, you kind of weave them in together, but go ahead.
Yeah. So on the introvert versus extrovert, and I do understand that many of the clubs and organizations might on the surface look like they're very much geared for more extroverted students. But the resources I talked about in CAPS, those the groups that are forming around anxiety, the anxiety doesn't have to be anxiety with a capital A and a diagnosed medical condition. It can just be, I'm anxious trying to make new friends. It makes me feel uncomfortable, right? And so taking advantage of those opportunities, going on February 2nd to that toolkit meeting, and being able to get resources from CAPS there about navigating a big place like this as an introvert, or as someone who has some level of social anxiety. Those would be, I think, things that could be really, really helpful for a student who's more introverted. And the one-on-one, talking to the RA, or talking one-on-one with a trusted staff member or faculty member. Those are all places that I would point to and things I would suggest.
Nicole, do we have any more questions, or are we out of questions?
We are out of questions.
Okay, I am going to share my screen again, just briefly. And this screen just shows you some of the upcoming important dates that maybe your student has mentioned to you, maybe not, but something that you can be aware of. After this session, I will send out a copy of the slides and the recording to everyone who registered. So you will receive a copy of this. Please don't feel like you need to take a screenshot or write them all down. There's no need for that. But we like to do this just so that you're aware of upcoming dates for your student. And then our last slide is a thank you. As I mentioned before, everything will be available after this presentation, the slides, the recording. And if you have not yet joined our MFamily portal, which is how we communicate with our families, how we let them know about events, about upcoming presentations, about things that are happening around the university, you can scan that QR code and it'll take you right to the portal so that you can register. There's also an official UMich parent Facebook group that you can join. And if you need to ask a question, I know that I do my best thinking at 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and I will think of something that I really need to ask someone, and I totally forgot to ask tonight. Please feel free to send us an email. I do get them directly, so I'd be happy to answer them or pass them on to someone who can answer them for you. It will not be at 3 in the morning, but I will think about it. So please reach out if you have any questions. And as Laura said, we're happy to help your students. All three of us are in the Dean of Students office. So if you have any questions, if your student has any questions, we're more than happy to help them. So we thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you at some future conversations.
Go Blue.